I'm the Talking Skull, and this year I'm exploring classic first-person shooters to draw a line from Wolfenstein 3D to Halo. This week, I played the crown jewel of 1998's treasure trove of new developers. Your first impression of Half-Life is, well, it's this long tram ride. People joke about this intro today, but it served a real purpose in 1998. The 5 minutes of sitting in this little box taking a guided tour sets the expectation that this will not be a thrill-a-minute shotgun blasting action joyride like Quake or Duke Nukem. The industry as a whole seemed to be moving away from that style of FPS, with 1998's big hits all slowing the pace down to focus on environmental storytelling, strategy, or anime. So, what does this tram ride focus on? Spectacle and world building. Watching these construction bots ambulate is kind of cool even today, and check out this realistic helicopter. But aside from looking nice, this intro sits us down and immerses us in the day-to-day mundanity of a real research institution.
If you feel you have been exposed to radioactive or other hazardous materials in the course of your duties, contact your radiation safety officer immediately.
Half-Life desperately pitches you on the idea that this is not a video game stage, but a real facility. Once you step off the tram, guards and scientists speak to you like a coworker, discussing the day's work and chastising you for being a lazybones.
Morning, Mr. Freeman. Looks like you're running late.
Did Valve make Gordon Freeman a slacker to justify him being alone on the tram into work? This facility lives and breathes. Characters are animated with, supposedly, the first skeletal animation system in a video game, and wait, really? Other 3D games re-rendered entire character meshes for every keyframe. That's kind of incredible. I don't think these folks look as good as the Na'Vi, but they're less taxing to render, so there can be more of them. NPCs are even fully voiced with lip sync.
They're waiting for you, Gordon, in the test chamber.
This is one of Half-Life's biggest advancements, where competitors relied on cutscenes, text, and body language to communicate. Half-Life's NPCs prattle on about the state of the facility and especially how lazy Gordon is.
Weren't you supposed to be in the test chamber half an hour ago?
And what do we get for all this setup?
It's not running down. It's not.
Once things go wrong, they go catastrophically wrong. Thanks to Half-Life's patient set dressing, this pandemonium hits harder and feels more personal than even Unreal. We aren't strangers in a strange land bearing witness to others' lives. On some level, however shallow, we knew these people. We ogled these sci-fi contraptions. We followed these paint lines and used this elevator. This guy spoke to me. He tried to warn me that the experiment was unsafe.
It wasn't meant to do this in the first place.
This guy called me lazy. As Gabe Newell put it, I felt like I owed them protection. Half-Life's opening chapters set a darker, more immersive tone than any FPS before it. Artist Ted Backman drafted a horde of grotesque creatures specifically designed to elicit the kind of psychosexual fear that Silent Hill would later implement. You're faced with your first head crab before you even find a weapon, and your first gun is eluded from the corpse of a guard you may have spoken to, a guard who was a prick to you.
Can we do this later?
Eventually, you join forces with these same guards, who do their best to follow you and provide backup. Valve won't be wowing you with this friendly AI, but for helping out at all, and for their little bits of chatter, they still inject personality and empathy into a notoriously callous genre. Will you stop shooting me?
Man, did you see that shot?
You shot me! Despite some hiccups, the AI here behaves with much more nuance than in previous shooters. Enemy soldiers move between cover or use grenades to flush you out. Hound eyes will team up and move as a pack or scatter and regroup. Ninjas dodge and hide, then pop out when you're not looking. On top of these dynamic interactions, frequent scripted events spice up enemy behavior. Half-Life's gameplay is mediocre. Some weapons are awkward, and the game is designed around using auto-aim on a mouse, which... And the overwhelmingly frequent checkpoints are not enough to excuse the Shadow Warrior tier BS. But none of that defined Half-Life. Half-Life made its mark in the integration of narrative beats into gameplay. We've seen a steady progression down this path starting with Marathon, but Valve was the first FPS developer to hire a professional writer for their team, and his expertise elevates Half-Life's storytelling to ever-presence. Remember that intro where we walk through the facility before seeing it destroyed? That was Mark Laidlaw's idea, and exemplifies the kind of implicit storytelling that he and Valve brought to the table as often as possible. Half-Life's closest competition, Unreal, devoted much of its attention to environmental storytelling, but everything Unreal presents to the player is flat. There's no setup and payoff, no intrigue, no developing themes or plot beats. There's interesting stuff to look at and obvious inferences to make, but little tying scenes together and nothing dynamic. Half-Life constantly uses one moment to set up the next, driving a consistent through line from the serene start to the surreal finish. Half-Life's lived-in facilities and talkative allies prop up a shallow plot with just enough twists and intrigue to keep you invested. If the Great Cake Deception tells us anything, it's just how much mileage Valve can get out of minimal storytelling. Every few chapters adds a new wrinkle. You're desperate to reach your rescuers, until you learn that they're not rescuers at all.
Rescue, at last! Thank God you're here!
Search and destroy Force Bravo reports.
You get to see the escalation of this brewing war and watch the tides gradually turn. And who is this mysterious suit calmly observing the massacre? Why do the soldiers hate Morgan Freeman so much?
So, who is this guy, Freeman? They say he was at Ground Zero. Science team? You think he was responsible? Sabotage, maybe?
Copious scripted events provide a dash of flavor for levels that already lean heavily on set pieces. If Marathon 2 lit the spark of set piece design, Half-Life wrote the word set piece in fire on our lawns. Headcrab slalom down this elevator shaft. Too insubstantial? What about a whole stage about using grenades as a stealth distraction tool? Or an entire level about riding a tram? No, not that one. This is part of why the less than stellar core gameplay doesn't hurt Half-Life as much as you might expect. Half-Life rarely settles for its core gameplay. It so often introduces something new, something novel to be the foundation for moments, sequences, or entire stages. Even beyond these set pieces and scripted events, many moment-to-moment interactions are structured more as cutesy physics puzzles than combat challenges. By the time you're sicking pet beetles at ninja acrobats, any semblance of traditional running and gunning has been left behind. 1998 was a wild year for first-person shooters. It saw the birth of two new genres, a masterclass in traditional FPS design, and new developers throwing down the gauntlet for the old-timers. With Half-Life, Valve showed us yet another glimpse of what 3D games can do when they escape the long shadow of doom. Critics raved over Half-Life, which steamrolled all competition in awards and ratings. The best FPS designers in the world tripped over themselves to praise Half-Life. But perhaps the best praise of all comes from Gabe Newell himself, who expressed a feeling most creatives can relate to. At the end of other projects, I'm usually more neutral about them when they go out the door, with an acute awareness of everything you'd like to have added. I don't feel that way about Half-Life. If you want to play Half-Life today, you're in luck. The original version and later source port are both still available on Steam and work well with minimal fiddling. That said, much of what made Half-Life great has been replicated over and over for the past 20 plus years, while much of what's lackluster still stings. Be ready for some jagged edges. Enter Black Mesa, a fan project to remake Half-Life from the ground up, using Valve's later Source engine to improve its visuals, gun feel, level design, and generally bringing it up to a more modern standard. It does completely reimagine the final levels, but that's probably for the best. In the spirit of the rebuild of Evangelion, I like to refer to it as Half-Life 2-1. Black Mesa is great. I highly recommend it. Valve loved and catered for its modders, which should come as no surprise since many of its developers were hired straight out of the Quake modding scene to work on Half-Life, which itself was built up from the licensed Quake engine. Any modding team Valve liked, they did in fact put a ring on. By which I mean bought. Much of Valve's early work would come from modders that Valve hired, funded, and supported. It's nice to see that spirit lives on with Valve's endorsement of Black Mesa. If this old stuff is interesting to you, check out the rest of my series on first-person shooters to see what I had to say about Quake and more. And if there's anything you think I should cover, leave a comment so I can see. This week, Valve threw their hat in the ring of new FPS developers in 1998. Next week, 1999 kicks off with a hot new game from... What? That can't be right. Okay. I'll be back next week with more Valve.